Hello and welcome to That British Homestead. Today, well, we're tackling a problem that is really getting a bit overwhelming. I don't know if it's like you guys are the same as me, but this time of year, the weeds just go mental, okay? So we're tackling the weeds. There's many ways that we're going to do that. Hand picking the weeds, we're going to trim the weeds, and we're going to be using the hoe to hoe the weeds. So all of this combination is hopefully going to lessen the weeds. This time of year, it is terrible and it feels so overwhelming. Many new gardeners actually give up gardening this time of year because they're like, it can't just be me. And you go onto Facebook, you go onto Instagram, go onto YouTube, and you see loads of people and they have absolutely gorgeous gardens, not a weed in sight, okay? And that's just not the reality of my gardening. My gardening is very weedy, okay? I have to say, and the weeds, I honestly, this time of year, very overwhelming, and it's just one of those things where you have to keep hand picking, hoeing, trimming, etc., and just keeping on top of it, which is difficult when you have a very small, very tiny dictator that tells you when or when you can't do stuff. So what we're going to do is a little bit of trimming, and I'm going to get on with the hoeing. Do you want to know something really embarrassing? Of course you do, right? I've been gardening for absolutely years, and I've never thought of hoeing like areas that have small weeds in it. I've literally always pulled the little weeds up by hand, and I've never thought of hoeing it until I watched this YouTube video, and the guy was like, oh, you can just hoe down the weeds, and I was like, of course I can. I was talking to my mum, and she was like, well, of course not. Your nan never hoed, so she was picked them out by hand, so that's why you do it. And I was like, makes sense. I've never seen anyone in real life. And that's the great thing about YouTube, is that there's things that I do, things that you do, things that we do, and we just take that for granted. And it isn't for granted, because there's people who, like me, never thought about it before. And it kind of reminds me of a phone call. Whilst I was having this phone call, I was talking to my mum on the phone. She was like, what's that amazing trick you have for breaking a sweet corn in half? I was like, I don't have an amazing trick for breaking a sweet corn in half. Anyway, what I do is I hit it with a knife and I snap it, and she literally took a bread knife and was cutting all the way through. And I feel like this, I was using a bread knife to cut all the way through by picking them out by hand. It wasn't until wonderful little Andrew came along that I was like, oh my days, that makes sense. And I'm going to do that. So it makes sense, doesn't it? So I ran over. Let's get to work. Work, baby, work, baby. So there's quite a lot of work that we had to get done this weekend, and it was a family event. Jasmine is actually picking some stinging nettles, and I'm laughing because she goes, Mummy, can you make sure that they know that I'm picking stinging nettles for stinging nettle soup, because I don't want them to think I'm a weirdo. I was like, yes, that will make them think you're less weird. But she really wanted to make stinging nettle soup, which we make at the end of this video, so stay tuned if you want to see that, and I'll share the recipe with you later, and it'll be down in the description below. So she's going ahead and putting them all in a cardboard box so that we can have them for dinner, and I think it's tomorrow that we have it for dinner. And we're going to head and pulling out all of these weeds out of my carrot bed. And if you're thinking, wow, there doesn't look like there's any carrots in this bed, you're correct. I think there was, look, there's one. See, you were wrong. I'm terrible at germinating carrots, so I'm going to go ahead and carry on trying to get carrots. But the onions are doing really well. They're super weedy, but now Bob's gone through and totally weeded them all by hand, I can go through and hoe down the rows, and I'm doing that pretty much every other time I go to the allotment now, just to stop any of those little weeds getting kind of rooted in there. I do find some of the seeds, they just have such really strong tap roots that it's very difficult to get, you know, like them out without actually pulling them. So now that they're more sustainable, it's much easier. I do feel that it was the covering of them with the netted material that made sure that these weeds really got a root on them. However, I have to say that it did stop the birds from eating them and pulling them out and taking the worms beneath them, which is really annoying every time you have to keep putting them back in. So there's one thing. This particular allotment has terrible problem with bindweed, and I was actually reading about bindweed, and you can go ahead and hoe off the little seedlings, and yes, it won't get rid of the massive amounts of roots within the soil. However, it does severely weaken this plant, and every year I'm pulling it out of this particular patch and it is becoming a lot less strong. If you go back and look at some of the previous videos where the weeds are absolutely ridiculous, it has got a lot weaker and easier to manage, which is what we want. We're slowly over time making sure that these plants are weakening, and in a couple of years time they probably won't be coming back up, which is the dream. Stinging nettles, bindweed, docks and burdock is probably the worst problems we have on the allotment, and they're really tricky. Even the greenhouse is not free from all of these weeds. It simply has been the best weather for growing weeds. It's been lovely, a lot of rain, and it's produced a lot of weeds. The sun has been perfect for them to have a large amount of growth. Soon the vegetables that we've been growing over the spring are going to spring up and overshadow those weeds, but at the moment it is just a drog. Just keep going. Hello, I've just got back from the allotment and I thought we'll take some of the nettles that Jasmine collected to make nettle soup. I know what you're thinking, right? Nettle soup, what are you on? Or you're thinking, nettle soup, you've been watching Clarkson's Farm. Yes, I have. So we're watching Clarkson's Farm, and Jasmine, my daughter, she was like, oh, I want to try nettle soup. And I thought, well, why not? You know, so found a recipe for nettle soup and I thought I'd make it. I thought this would tie quite nicely into the, oh my god, there's so many weeds sort of situation that we're in. So we're going to try to use most of this stuff that we've grown on the allotment to make this nettle soup. Apparently, and I've read everywhere because I was like proper like, when she said it, and I know that loads of you guys have been telling me you've got so many nettles, make nettle soup. I was still like, don't really want to eat nettles, but I've read that it's absolutely amazing. So I thought, let's have it for dinner tonight. I've got some sourdough bread, in case you're wondering what that is. Just making some sourdough bread here. It's for my fermenting away. This is actually for tomorrow. I've got some in the fridge for today. So I'm going to base this on a recipe and I'll link that below. I'm going to change it in certain ways because I just think it'd be nicer. So it asks for 2 cups of leeks. I've actually got frozen leeks that we got from the allotment, and I'm just going to cook these in butter because everything's better when you cook it in butter. So in an empty saucepan I'm going to put 2 cups of leeks. One cup. 2 cups. Okay, so the recipe actually calls for a large onion and a few shallots. I don't actually have a large onion because all we've got left is a load of these small shallots. So we're just going to go for a whole heap in serving of small shallots. So I'm just peeling and chopping these shallots and putting them in with the butter. Sauteing them in butter really brings out A, the flavour of the shallots, and B, it really adds that sort of creamy, luxurious flavour to whatever you're cooking. So it's one of our favourite fats to cook in. So it doesn't actually say garlic, but I'm one of those people that I can't imagine having like a meal without garlic. So I've got some garlic. This is actually elephant garlic. As you can see, it's one of the small ones. That's why we're using it. I'm going to go ahead and put these 3 cloves of your head of garlic in there because I love garlic. So I'm just going to chop them up very roughly, pop them in. Remember that this elephant garlic is weaker than other garlics. It's actually related to leeks, I believe. And as we're in May, they do start to sprout now. Like, I really I'm getting to the end of my garlic now. That's the only garlic I've actually got left this year because we've got so much of it. Normally I have an entire basket left this time of year, and I store it in olive oil, but no point, I'll probably finish that by the end of the week, which is sad because I absolutely love garlic. It's one of my favourite things to eat, or it's my favourite harvest because I use it in everything. Next thing I'm going to do is the potatoes. So I'm going to do 3 medium-sized potatoes. They have started to sprout, so I'm just going to cut the sprouts off. I'm going to boil these. Normally, I always cook potatoes with their skin on, but because you want to reserve the green colour, I'm not going to do that today. It just gives you that little bit of forage on it. I think it's better for you. We are peeling and pre-boiling these potatoes, but apparently it gives the soup a better texture. So I thought I'd give it a try. We are going to be blending it, so it's going to be needing a smooth texture. Give these a wash under the tap. I like to wash them a couple of times to get the starch off them. We don't want them to have that gloopy texture, so wash the starch off. Okay, so this is the bit that I honestly haven't been looking forward to. I'm going to wear these gloves for this. Obviously been really careful. And stinging nettles. Jasmine helpfully, she picked all of these, bless her. She's picked me a ton of stinging nettles. So she was like, oh mummy, I want this soup, and I was like, yeah, you can have it if you get the stinging nettles, thinking that she wouldn't want to do the stinging nettles. I was wrong. Oh, and there's so much mud in it. So these were picked freshly, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull off the leaves, and I want to pick all the good leaves, you know what I mean, and then I'm going to compost the rest and give them a really good wash. So enjoy. Now, funny enough, I've never eaten stinging nettles before, so this could be right or wrong, but I just don't fancy eating that sticky bit, you see? So I'm just going to cut that off. So if I'm doing it wrong, let me know down below. I have to say, cutting those up, I wasn't enjoying it at all, I'm not going to lie to you. However, now that they're all done, they're fine. The only thing I think is weird is I can't get my hand in there. Normally with greens I get my hands right in there, you know, like proper make sure they're clean. Obviously I'm not going to do that with stinging nettles. But saying that, these are really widely eaten around the world and they're super nutritious, and I know you guys have told me so many times they're so nutritious. And now they're all clean and stuff, they look really nice. Just steaming them. They smell really sweet. I genuinely thought they were going to smell like grass. They don't look too bad. They're actually looking quite nice. I'm still a little bit like, oh, they're gonna burn me. Ha, sting me even. But they're not. And the reason for that is the little hairs are the things that sting you, and as you can see they're kind of all laying down now. They've all been denatured. It's got this beautiful green. Apparently you can actually use these as a dye, natural dye on clothing. They are very diverse and full of nutrients, and I'm actually really hoping, all jokings aside, I'm actually hoping that these are, God that's hot. I'm really hoping that they're going to be really delicious, because I grow so many of these that it would actually be beneficial if this was like my family's favourite food. Like I'd be very grateful for that, because that means that they'd all be really enthusiastic about harvesting them, and I really dislike harvesting nettles. I believe what I'm doing here is giving it sort of a greater surface area to leach that colour out. Now, they are very beautiful actually, now that they're sort of chopped up and that. They look very luxurious and very like they're high in iron, which we all kind of need. Everyone can do with a bit more iron, eh? I've been anemic for most of my life. I've actually just managed to get myself out of anemia. And I mean, when I say most of my life, I think I was first diagnosed with anemia when I was a teenager. So this is something that, if it has got, you know, loads of nutrients in, I'll definitely keep it in my diet if it's nice. Everyone said, I've watched about nettles, they're like, it's got a really weird, like, not weird, but like a flavour that you just can't describe. Like, I would say that that's true. It's sweet. Yeah, I know what they mean now. Like, I would describe it as nice. It's sweet. Yeah, it's just really pleasant, really light, refreshing, spring. That's it, it's a spring taste, which is not very helpful at all. So, shall we? So I made this chicken stock yesterday by boiling chicken bones, some leeks, onions and some carrots. So I'm gonna go ahead and measure out 4 cups. You wanna make sure it's a light broth that you're using, not anything too dark. The recipe asks for a cup of diced celery. I don't have celery, but I have celery that I have dried, so I'm going to use that. I'm going to put a generous handful of dried celery leaves. So excited. I don't know if you noticed, but it took me about a week to actually film this entire video, but I've finally done it. I have my soup nicely warmed up. I put about I put about a quarter of a cup of cream in it. It is really, really nice. So I'm gonna try it for you. So it's super creamy, like super creamy. It's quite rich. It reminds me of broccoli. And the flavour of the soup is really nice though. Kind of reminds me of like, if you were gonna make, when I was a kid, right, we used to have on a Saturday turkey drumsticks with pasta and sauce, the cheese and broccoli one. It tastes like, if you were going to do like a gourmet cheese and broccoli pasta sauce, this is what it tastes like. It generally throws me back to that time. My sister puts cheese in her cream and broccoli sauce, pasta and sauce even. It reminds me of that. Is it nice? Yes. Is it unexpected? Yes. It's nice. I would say if you haven't tried it, give it a go. And I think it's really nice. You know what would be nice with it? Some almonds. Hello. He's so grizzly because he's had his, what are they called? Immunisations. It just made him quite grizzly. Doesn't want me to sit down, doesn't want me to stand up, he just wants to bounce like this. So he's fine, he just wants to do this. Which will tell you, my legs are going to be so toned by the end of this week. Chop them up roughly. I tell you, it's hard not to cut your fingers off whilst bouncing. But he's happy now, so it's all good. It's all good, it's all good, it's good in the hood. 2 large cups of potatoes. So my camera actually overheated and is turned off. That happens all the time in summer. So